Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show.
Hey, Health Coach Nation. If you're a coach, a wellness professional, or a beauty practitioner, you know how important it is to protect your business while growing your impact. That is where Alternative Balance comes in. Alternative Balance is a membership-based group that provides liability insurance and essential business resources to help you feel confident and secure in your work. Whether you're just starting out or you're scaling up your business, their coverage and benefits like marketing tools, business growth webinars, and 5-star customer service are all designed to help you thrive. I highly recommend checking them out. I've even interviewed them on the show before. Go to alternativebalance.com to learn more and get coverage that fits your business needs.
So I'm going to let her take it away and share with you what it is. But first, just go ahead and introduce yourself and your story a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Hailey. I'm Dr. Satya Sardanikis, and I help people heal chronic conditions by addressing nervous system dysregulation and fascial tension together, which is often the missing piece when practices like breathwork or meditation aren't creating the results that we're hoping for. Really came to this work in my own healing journey. I was dealing with intense neurological symptoms and kept trying to relax my body and my mind using things like meditation, yoga, breath work, mindset work, and nothing seemed to really create lasting change. So it was really when I started to work more with fascia and my nervous system together that I started to experience more deep and long-lasting sustainable healing. So that's why I created Neurofascial Flow Method and my membership inside the Chrysalis, which is a space where people can explore simple somatic practices that help release tension and regulate the nervous system and create real embodied change. So it's designed to complement and deepen practices like breath work, mindset work, chiropractic, OT, PT, because when fascia tension is released, then the whole body can shift into a place of greater change receptivity for whatever other methods you might be trying to use, and just greater ease and resilience overall.
Wow, awesome. So for those of us who don't know, tell us about what is fascia, and let's start at just the basics of how you discovered this work.
Okay. So fascia is the spiderweb-like material that is throughout the entire body, and it is suspending and enmeshing and holding all of the fascia or the bones and the muscles and the organs in place in relationship to one another. So if you see on a cut of meat, they have that tough white stuff, but they've cut most of it off. In the body, everything is it's like the scaffolding that's holding everything in relationship to one another. And I came into that paying attention to it more because in school, in my chiropractic degree, they taught us that the skeleton is the support structure of the body, the muscles move it, and fascia is just something we kind of get out of the way in anatomy lab to see the real stuff. But in reality, what it is it's responsible for how we hold ourselves in space. And more than that, from a structural perspective, in a neurological perspective, it has a really high density of receptors that go to the brain to signal where we are in space, and that affects our sense of safety. So the receptors are called proprioceptors, or proprioceptive feedback goes to the brain when you have deep pressure or movement. And I got into it because I had a major brain injury that nobody recognized for 20 years after I had the car accident when I was a little kid. I had a lot of sensory sensitivities and weird neurological symptoms and chronic pain. And that really led me into the world of fascia, because once they finally said, oh, actually your brain, when you were a kid, got pulled out of your skull in this car accident, which is actually extremely common. And I know we could do a whole episode just on that, but 1 in 4 people with neck pain who've ever had a head injury, whether it was a big traumatic brain injury or you had a concussion, were sent back out to play or whatever, 1 in 4 people with neck pain who've ever had whiplash or a head injury have some degree of brain herniation. So it's crazy common and misdiagnosed a lot, and it keeps people locked in alarm mode. But then I was taking care of kids. My specialty early in practice was working with children with autism, dyslexia, ADHD, schizophrenia, like neurological issues. And I recognized that there was a lot of overlap between my experience and these kids and their stressed out parents trying to care for high needs kids. And that brought me into the nervous system dysregulation piece, where it's like, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do if it's like the right thing. All change is hard when the system is in this defensive, protective alarm mode. And we get stuck in it because of the body being not moving well. And there's a lot of other reasons for stress, but this fascial piece, this structural piece, is often missed. That when we hold tension in the body, it actually signals alarm to the brain, even if nothing else ever stressed you out. Even if you had a perfect diet and you meditate all the time and you get enough sleep and you get enough hugs and you feel on track with your sense of purpose, stuck places in the body can actually perpetuate alarm signals and keep it stuck in that alarm mode.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I know. It's like so much. I know.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we start to get unstuck? Maybe share, what does this technique kind of look like and what should we expect?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So most kinds of body work are just saying you're stuck, let's loosen it, right? Massage says this is tight, let's loosen it. Chiropractic says this joint is jammed up, let's move it. But the issue is that often causes more nervous system dysregulation because the body is using, especially the fascia, has a really strong protective function. And in fact, one of the most common patterns that I see in the body in people who are stuck in this alarm mode for a long period of time is that the rib cage doesn't expand circumferentially to breathe because the ribs are glued together. And my colleagues and I have a theory. They all say they see the same thing, but my theory about it is I think that the brain is probably trying to make armor to protect your vital organs when you have chronic alarm mode in the brain, in the nervous system, if your brain doesn't feel safe. So the thing that most kinds of bodywork try to do is just loosen it up. But if the system feels unsafe about that and it's using it to protect itself, then it makes like this whiplash, or at minimum, you just have a massage, it loosens up and then it tightens back up again, right? Within a couple hours, because your brain says, no, actually I need that tight. And so the thing that we need to do is have I think about it like a container for change receptivity. And there's this 5-step process that's really core to neurofascial flow method that I think all great, like masterful people are doing this. I'm just going to adjust my camera. There we go. I think that all great masterful healers, facilitators, coaches, etc. are doing this. But I actually had a client I had to go so slow with because of really extreme trauma that I was able to say, okay, here's actually the 5-step framework. So if you need to troubleshoot, you can actually look at the steps. And most kinds of therapies, techniques, anything from body work to mindset work that are out there are going straight to step 3, which is where the change happens. So I like to start with step 1, establish safety. Because change is hard, we need to bring the brain into a state of at least more change receptivity. It's not that you need to heal all nervous system dysregulation before you can change anything, but we need to start with establishing that safety baseline. And from there, facilitate and invite a softening of the body to like remove its own clenching effort, its own resistance. And then we can go into the change part. Step 3 is activating change. And that's whatever technique or therapy you do, but you do it while tracking what I call somatic tuning, which is tracking the nervous system's autonomic response so that you make sure that you don't exceed the body's capacity to actually integrate that input. Because oftentimes it's like too much too fast. And that's when we get those boomerang effects or that nervous system dysregulation. So that's like the first skill I actually teach in the program is this somatic tuning. And it takes a little bit of time, but you can learn just like a musician can learn if a note is a little sharp or a little flat, you can actually feel the physiological signs of your body going into this nervous system alarm. And the earlier you notice it, then you can stop and regroup and reestablish safety. That's step 4. And then you integrate and adapt to that set point, just like, you don't take your training wheels off your bicycle and then try to go do BMX in the Olympics. You got to like take some bike rides around the block, stop wiggling so much, and you go concentrically bigger and deeper when you use this 5-step process.
Interesting. Okay. So when we are trying to catch ourselves when we're in that state that is the alarm state, what are maybe some symptoms someone might experience, or what might they need to watch out for to catch that?
Yeah. So a baseline alarm, if the system is just living in survival mode, and I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about in the moment, because I think they're both really important to be able to recognize. So your system living in a state of survival mode or alarm can look like more anxiety, depression, difficulty focusing, more hypersensitivity, hyperreactivity, more easily upset, but also more startled by sounds or sensitive to light sometimes, like getting irritated more easily, but also digestive distress, because the brain says digestion's not so important if I'm trying to survive a tiger attack or something. You're also going to see less hormone balance and regulation, and maybe fertility issues, because again, the brain says, well, I don't want to bring a baby into an unsafe world, and I'm not prioritizing growth and development and healing. So you might have frequent colds and flus, infections, slow wound healing. There's even a higher vulnerability to cancer because it's a long-term threat, and the brain says that's not so important as short-term threats. So you might have more allergies, more itchy, sneezy, wheezy, allergic type reactions. And this is all totally normal. This is totally normal because that's how you handle alarm. It's designed for short term. But a lot of times we are living in that state of alarm, and it compromises not just our ability to like function and feel ease in our lives, but also our ability to do our work. And that like Maslow's hierarchy of needs triangle, where self-actualization and your deepest expression of purpose is at the top and your foundational needs are at the bottom. And he talks about food and water and shelter, but he's missing proprioception, that the brain actually requires proprioceptive feedback in order to function normally. And if you have stuck places anywhere in the body, they're starving the brain of the normal proprioceptive feedback that happens when you just move. So that's what survival mode looks like as an ongoing. The activation you can feel as it varies from person to person, and I take people into a deeper dive of this in our program. But what it on a very foundational level looks like is either constriction versus expansion. So when your system goes into alarm, you might feel a more shallow breathing, a higher heart rate, a clenching sensation. You might have like familiar pains or symptoms get exaggerated in that time. Whereas when your nervous system moves into a state of relaxation and openness, you have easier breathing, you have more easy posture. Like posture tends to be more open by default without the effort of like always having to try to make yourself sit up straight, and just an overall sensation of softness and openness. And so learning to be able to track those sensations more deeply is actually how you can customize anything. Like it's not just for during therapeutic sessions, but I teach people like you can use that when you're deciding what to eat for dinner, and see, does this food make me feel more constricted or more expanded?
Interesting. Okay. So with somebody who, you went through a healing journey, it sounds like you had a brain injury and people couldn't figure it out. And I'm curious, like, what did your recovery journey look like? Like, did you do techniques every day? And now do you do like a maintenance thing, or like what did it kind of look like for you?
Yeah. So thanks for asking that question, Hailey. It's actually it's very complicated, as it often is for those of us that innovate something, right? Like the whole point is now I can shortcut it for other people. But I had multiple additional head injuries before anybody knew that I had this condition. Once I found out, I looked at how can I reduce the tension on the spinal cord. And that was a really big piece, not just for me, but I realized for everybody that has forward head posture from sitting on our computers all day, or because you had whiplash a long time ago. And so that tension in the spinal cord actually connects down to the fascia, down the back of the legs, all the way into the feet. And just like pulling on the edge of a bed sheet, if anything from skull to toes has tension in it, it'll actually put more tension in the spinal cord and exaggerate the alarm. And so a lot of what I wanted to focus on was reducing the tension in that. It's called the dural fascial kinetic chain between the dura mater and the fascia and the lower legs. And I couldn't do it because of hypersensitivity. So what it really had to look like first was calming down my nervous system. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, like if you smash your finger on the door, the first thing you want to do, other than maybe curse, is shake it and squeeze it, right? Because both of those things, both movement and deep pressure, not light touch, but deep pressure, send proprioceptive feedback to the brain. So the smashing the finger sent nociception, alarm signals, and then your movement and deep pressure sends proprioception. And so I actually said, oh, we can use that as a way to temporarily create a window of access so that we can go and do the unwinding process. And so this is how we can interrupt that hiccups-like loop, is with proprioceptive feedback. And the easiest, simplest thing that I will always tell people is like, in the moment, if you get alarm buzziness, this works, but also it's really nice to just start your day. Like you take vitamins. This is like taking a vitamin for your nervous system, where you give yourself these broad, deep compressions. I call them squeeze hugs because it's like a good hug. But the proprioceptors are in the fascia and in the joints and in the muscles. They're everywhere. So give yourself these broad, deep squeezes. And you see, I spend like a second on each space and then I move along. And you notice as I'm doing this that my voice just slowed down. I was getting all buzzy and excited talking about it. I didn't do that on purpose. That's how fast it makes me have a deep breath. That's how fast it actually creates a shift in the nervous system, which is a really cool way to handle it in the moment. But doing that like before a therapy session, before a breathwork session, before a massage, we'll do that step one of establishing safety, which triggered a softening in my system. And now, if I wanted to go and do some kind of therapeutic thing, I would be able to actually incorporate it better. And then I could do it again afterward to help the system say, oh, I'm safe with this newly changed thing in the body. And so I started with that, and then I developed a lot of other spine-focused somatic practices that also feed a lot of more proprioception to the brain. So that's like even still, my daily habit is I spend probably 5 to 10 minutes a day doing those neurosomatic practices, which are like waving through the spine. There's some other ones. And then I did that so I could get the window of access to be able to reduce tension in that dural fascial kinetic chain that's affecting the spinal cord and loosen the rib cage fascia so that I can actually breathe instead of using these muscles. So oftentimes if the rib cage is all gluey together, then people have chronic neck tension because these muscles are having to lift the rib cage to get the pressure gradient to let your lungs expand to breathe. And then you have chronically tight neck muscles. And if you want, Hailey, I can show you guys really quick, like a way to assess and see if that's happening in your rib cage. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay. All right. So there's two things you can do. One of them is you can take a soft measuring tape and bring it like just under your armpits around your rib cage and take a breath, blow all the way out, take the measurement, and then breathe all the way in and take the measurement. And you look at the difference. So you should, as an adult, have anywhere from like 2.5 to 4.5, depending on like how big your rib cage is. Like men who have a wider frame might have a more like a 4.5 inch difference, whereas a really small framed woman, 2.5 might be normal. So it's always like comparing you to you over time, but you're looking at the difference, and you can even compare it, the upper rib cage there to the lower rib cage, like just right where the sternum ends, where your stomach begins. So not the very bottom of the ribs, but the bottom part of the rib cage that is complete all the way around. And you take those measurements. And another thing that you can do is look at the articulation by trying to be like seaweed underwater and float your spine side to side with a wave. And notice, can you articulate through every place? Or what's pretty common is that the lower spine will articulate. And then by the time you get to like between about your neck and your like middle of your sternum, it moves like a single line, and then your head wants to flop. Don't let your head flop. That's why your neck is always tight, because your brain is trying to protect the neck from flopping. But it's not because of the neck having an issue. It's because the rib cage is all gluey together. So the neck has to move extra to try to give you your range of motion. And so these are the kinds of things that I like really had to dive into, but all of that protective function meant I had to start with my feet. And so like if you're wearing stockings and they're falling down, you can't really pull it up from the waistband, because you're going to like put a hole in the waistband. It's not going to work anyway. You have to start down by your feet and like feed the fabric up, right? It's really similar with the fascia, that we actually want to reduce the tension coming up into the spinal cord by feeding the length upward all the way from the feet up the legs and into the tailbone. And then you can come up into the pelvis and then into the rib cage. And finally, we can loosen anything that is jammed up around the head and neck.
Okay. So if somebody is a coach, or, maybe they're a functional medicine practitioner or something like that, what does it look like? Because I know you have a certification program or a training program where they can learn this, both to do on themselves and or with their clients. So what could that look like being incorporated into their practice? And how are some of the people that have been trained by you, how are they using it? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great question. For a coach or a practitioner who is just starting with neurofascial flow, the first step is really about experiencing the method for yourself, because you can only really guide others as deeply as you've gone in your own body. And it doesn't require you to have some chronic crazy illness or brain injury like I did. Inside the Chrysalis is really where the journey begins. That's a self-guided membership where I teach simple somatic practices and the fascia release sequence for the dural fascial kinetic chain. So you can start tuning into your body, noticing where your fascia is holding tension, and learning how to release it in a way that feels safe and natural. It's not really about doing anything like intense or complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as noticing, what am I feeling here? Does it feel open? Is there tension? Could I invite softness here? And we go through like how you can objectively measure what's happening with your nervous system, with the dural fascial kinetic chain, so you can track your progress really well as well. And a lot of times coaches and practitioners can already start to, apply through the lens of your professional knowledge and share these things with your people. They're very short and accessible, designed to fit into a busy life and complement things you might already be doing, like breathwork or meditation. And since your body's always adapting, it's really about creating small, consistent shifts that build over time. And as you start to feel that shift in your own body, like more ease and more safety and more capacity, then you naturally begin to understand how to hold that space for others. And if you feel called to take it deeper, there is an option to move into the certification program to guide clients through this work professionally. But it always starts with learning how to read your own body signals and practicing the method for yourself and building that somatic awareness first. That said, the second part of your question was like, how are people using it now? So the practitioners going through our current cohort of the certification program, we have, for example, a yoga teacher. She is noticing that she can shift how she leads yoga classes in a way that helps people to find where she thought that she had more flexibility, and realized that there's hyper mobility in some of her body and more articulation challenges in some of the core parts of her body. And so that awareness for her, she's been able to share so that her yoga students are not inadvertently activating their alarm part of their nervous system in class. We also have like chiropractors in the program who are seeing that they don't have to adjust their clients as frequently. Psychotherapists are seeing that they can see clients less frequently because they're doing these somatic practices at home. And so whether you're hands-on or hands-off, there's actually a place in the certification for all of you, because there's a lot about how you can give people more agency over their healing process and have more long-lasting results with less effort from both of you.
Nice. That's awesome. So also you have a membership, you have this option for practitioners, and so you really are an entrepreneur. And a lot of the people listening to this are as well. And I'm curious, like, what has been one of the biggest shifts you've had to make going from being a chiropractor and, just maybe not having your own business to having your own business?
Well, Hailey, I've had my own business since I started, since the very beginning, since I graduated.
Okay. So you don't know anything else.
No, I don't know anything else. I mean, I could tell you, I used to work in my dad's clinic before I was a doctor.
Well, maybe then that's the wrong question. Maybe the question should be, what for you as an entrepreneur, has helped you succeed the most or stay the most consistent, maybe when you don't see instant results? Because a lot of people listening here are newer and they're building things up and they're building up their audience and that kind of thing. So I'm curious kind of what advice you'd give them.
Yeah. If it's all right with you, I'm actually going to hone really in on that last thing you asked about what advice I would give, because the thing I think that I wish that I knew when I was just in clinical practice is that you don't have to practice. Your business does not need to look like what everyone else's looks like. For example, my health challenges stopped me from, it made it out of the question for me to have a traditional chiropractic model of kind of a high volume adjustments practice. And I actually ended up hiring so many different business coaches, but outside of my profession, that helped me create and curate something over time that is more transformation driven rather than selling a service. And also figuring out what I was constantly saying the same thing over and over so that I could leverage my time in a way that I separated from that time for dollars model of business into being able to say, well, what are the things that I'm saying to everybody, and how can I create that in a more accessible way? And that has helped me with my energy as an entrepreneur, but also it's helped me be able to still charge what the transformation is worth for my one-on-one work and create something that is more financially accessible for somebody. Inside the Chrysalis, I created that so that people can access this work without it costing me and my energy and my health. And that's been really profound.
Yes, definitely. Okay. And what about is there a mistake you've recovered from that comes to mind, or a fail that you maybe would share that you were able to conquer?
I'm just
kidding. Yeah. Well, it depends on how you label it. To me, I'm there is no such thing as failing.
I don't
just quit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the idea of failing forward. And I can actually tell you a mistake that I've seen a lot of my clients, because I do a lot of business coaching for healthcare providers and creating these boutique businesses. And a lot of times I have seen them too afraid to do something, and they're trying to get it right. And honestly, I'd say just try the thing, just do it, because failure is not actually failure. It's more information. Now I know, there's some famous quote that I'm sure has been misattributed, but somebody's like, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways that don't work.
Right.
And I think that that's really important is to anchor into your sense of purpose and why you're doing this. And then don't be so attached to whether someone likes this offer. Your offers are not your value as a human. And if somebody doesn't like your offer, or it doesn't land, or it doesn't go somewhere, fine, do another thing. Connect with in front of you and see how you can help them. And if you're one step in front of someone else, you are ready. That's something actually my godmother told me when I was younger, because I was worried about making sure that I knew all the things before I started teaching. I train other doctors in this work. And she said, if you wait until you get it perfect, it's going to make me cry. She's like, you're going to die before you start teaching, or before you start helping. And so
Wow.
just reach back and help somebody who's one step behind you.
Right. Yeah. And you're so right. So many people are just paralyzed because they want to get it perfect. They want to get it right. And they're afraid of that rejection or taking things personally. So it's
Hailey, last year I went viral on TikTok, and 90% of my videos, I'm still in my pajamas in bed. I haven't even gotten up yet. Like,
I love it. Oh my
just
god.
answering questions. I'm like, it doesn't, I'm not wearing makeup. I haven't taken a shower, brushed my hair, and it's still changed so many people's lives.
I love that.
And so it's not, you don't have to be perfect. Just show up.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad we're talking about that because we do live in a time where you can be in your pajamas in bed and sharing your message. People love it, and it's amazing.
Oh, great.
So yeah,
So
think
great.
about and what's cool too is you got out of your own head and into how can I help people instead of just, oh, I need to be perfect and get it all right. I need to help people. So I'm curious, what is next for you, and where can people connect with you after this episode?
Well, I'll answer the easy one, which is people can connect with me. My website is drsatya.wellness.com, DRSATYA wellness.com. And you can also find me on TikTok and Instagram at Dr. Satya Wellness, the same. And what's next for me is really about expanding the impact of this work. I'm really focused on growing inside the chrysalis so that more people can access these really simple somatic practices and start feeling the real shifts in their own bodies. Because there's so much like fascia therapy is having such a moment, and nervous system regulation, and they're not talking to each other enough. And this intersection is so simple and so impactful. And my hope is that it becomes a global movement where people realize that healing doesn't have to be forceful or complicated, that you don't need to micromanage change in the body. You just need to create the right conditions for your body to feel safe and to release naturally and get into growing and healing mode. And it makes everything easier. So to that end, I set up an affiliate program, which I'm just starting to, as an entrepreneur, I'm making sure I don't push. So it's a thing that I've just started opening up. If anyone's excited about that, I highly recommend you check out the program for yourself first. I want people to embody it. It's not just about growing it for the sake of growing it, but actually about helping more people deeply have the experience, not just the information. I'm also expanding the neurofascial flow method certification for coaches and practitioners who want to take this deeper, learning how to guide others in releasing tension and regulating their nervous systems in a way that creates more lasting and embodied change. And on a personal level, I'm really focused on refining how I live this work. It's about continuing, as I said, to prioritize my own sense of ease and connection and flow, because I believe that we can only hold space for others as deeply as we've learned to hold it for ourselves. Yeah. So it's a really exciting season of growth, and one that's deeply grounded in the principles of safety and ease and sustainable transformation.
Amazing. I love all of that. And we'll put some links in the show notes to your membership and certification. And I'm excited to actually partner with you on that as an affiliate, and also do a little training for your students on the business side of things soon.
Yeah, that's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful, and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.